Back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST. .net. We're headed off to Cincinnati on Thursday night. The Cincinnati Bengals pulling one out with a incredible late rush against the Indianapolis Colts. The Ravens' big blowout win over the Bills allowed me to slip into the Ravens commissary and their TV wall. This guy's no stranger to a crab cake or two here in Baltimore. He's going to have some of the finest chili waiting for me on Thursday night in the history of Cincinnati. We welcome Dave Lapham, now just 43 years as a member of the I can't even believe you're 43 years old, Lapham, but 43 years, 10 years with the Bengals in the 70s, 5 minutes with the New Jersey Generals, working for our leader at one point. And you can give a Trump story if you want later on, but we're worried about real football here, Dave Lapham. We got short rests, 2 undefeated teams. The battle for first place in the AFC North is in the Queen City Thursday night, Dave.
How about it, Nestor? How about it? I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns tie. Man, kiss me, sister. That's not a good way to start the season off. A division tie. That's best case scenario for both the Bengals and the Ravens, though, for those two teams to tie when you think about it. But yeah, going for the early division lead on Thursday night. And you're right, the Bengals pulled one out. They had to score 7. They outscored the Colts 17-0 in the fourth quarter to pull out an 11-point victory. So they were down 13 at one point, down a couple scores, and ultimately win it by a couple scores. So they did show some resiliency, and they had to because they made a lot of big mistakes.
Well, by the time I got to the back wall, and you know what I'm talking about, and the Ravens behind the press box, because I mean, the game was a runaway, and I could still watch that on television. I was really interested in watching the Browns and the Steelers. That game wasn't close. That was a 2-touchdown game. Your game wasn't close. It was a 2-touchdown game when I got to the back wall, and I wound up missing the fifth quarter of the Cleveland-Pittsburgh game work in the locker room. But I saw the end of your game, and I'll tell you what, if you put the game on with 8 minutes left to go in the third quarter and down 23-10 and watch the end of that game, you would sit where I am right now being pretty impressed by the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, I think their ability to realize that they've been in this position before. In fact, it's the third straight come from behind victory that they've had. They knocked the Detroit Lions out of the playoffs coming from behind, knocked the Baltimore Ravens out of the playoffs coming from behind, and now win the opener coming from behind in the fourth quarter. Andy Dalton now has 18 fourth quarter come from behind victory. So, it seems to be a habit forming, but it's a habit you want to break. You don't want to be in that situation as much as they're in, to tell you the truth. But the fact that they realize, they do have the resiliency to do it, I think is a positive sign.
Dave, let's go soup the nuts on this Bengals offseason. Let's start with Marvin, because we can go through the quarterback. We can go through Eifert and Mixon involved in this and how many new faces. But let's just start with Marvin. And I know I spoke to you probably like draft time or right around then. I tried to bring somebody on after the draft from everywhere, and I think you were the victim that I called upon. And, Marvin has survived everything there. And then I hear like they've made the playoffs 5 out of 7 years. I mean, we're 1 out of 5 around here. And I understand they haven't won in the postseason, but I don't think people outside of Cincinnati understand where the Brown family is, where Marvin stands in all of this, and why he's been retained the way he has.
Right. I think that, honestly, and you know Marvin as well as anybody, he's an easy guy to establish a relationship with, not just a working relationship. I mean, Mike Brown and Marvin Lewis are friends. They go to each other's house for dinner parties with other people outside of football. I mean, Marvin's that kind of guy. He's an engaging guy. He's a guy that you want to be around. And Mike Brown has a lot of confidence and faith and trust in Marvin Lewis. He meets with him every single morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I think he feels like they have a really good working relationship. And he feels like he was the guy that he wanted to continue to lead his football team. Now, they did blow the coaching staff up, 6 new coaches. And they blew up the offensive line. They have 4 new starters in the offensive line from last year. They're the only guy that retains the same spot as Clint Bowling. One of the new coaches is a new offensive line coach, which I think Frank Pollock is maybe the biggest acquisition they made in the offseason. So, I mean, a lot of things have changed. And Marvin knew that he had to blow some things up and change a lot of things. And with the newness, there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement that goes along with it. And it was palpable, during OTAs and training camp and all that sort of thing. And I was anxious to see if it would carry over to the regular season. And ultimately, it did. One of the things that Coach Austin talks about defensively is scoop and score. You know, every incompletion during training camp and OTAs, they treat it like a fumble. When the ball was on the ground, run to the ball, pick the ball up, and score with it. Well, habits are formed, and that's exactly how the first game of the season was sealed. With the victory was Clayton Fedulum and Hardy Nickerson Jr. Combining on a tackle, forced a fumble. Fedulum scoops it and goes 83 for a score. Last year, they only forced 7 fumbles all year and recovered 3 all year, both worse than the NFL by far. I mean, they just weren't violent enough, causing those kinds of turnovers. And right away, they force a fumble, pick it up, and score. Last year, they didn't have any fumble recovery scores, and they got one in the first game of this particular season. So, each team turned it over twice. That negated, but the fact that you get an unscripted, unconventional score out of one of your takeaways to finalize the game was big.
Dave Lapham has been a member of the Cincinnati Bengals since 1974, for the most part. He's been calling the action on the radio for 33 years now, after a 10-year career with the Bengals back in the 70s and early 80s, and a very quick stop in the USFLs and their Jersey Generals. But you've been there from the beginning, man, and I've known you forever, and Marvin's been there 15 years, whatever. I don't know that I've ever asked you to sort of take the hat off and talk about Mike Brown a little bit, because I think everything that happens in that organization starts with him. He was a part of the Hard Knocks, very maligned guy. There were some dark times there. He's been involved in the football side of things. But now at 83 years of age, wants to win, needs to win. I'm familiar with that with Art at the end of his run here, at the end of his ownership tenure here, that the reason Marvin and I think was kept around is Mike needs to win this year. Not the 5-year plan, not the 3-year plan, that there's a different sense of urgency there and a different sense of want than maybe there is in a whole lot of other places because of the legacy part of this, going back to the AFL, for crying out loud, for all of these years, and for him to not have won. We talk about the Cubs and we talk about lovable losers and these long-standing teams that haven't been able to win. Cleveland as a city hadn't been able to win. But for Mike Brown, I think he's been so maligned outside and there hasn't been enough success there. But I think there's a really deep want there and a deep football family and Massillon and all that goes into that I don't think is really appreciated even in Cincinnati, let alone outside, if you're talking about a global sense of what the franchise represents and why it's so urgent to win.
You've hit the nail on the head. I mean, Mike Brown is a football lifer, and the guy is a brilliant man. I mean, he has got an unbelievable mind. Harvard Law School, went to Dartmouth undergraduate, Harvard Law School. He was a practicing attorney. Paul Brown did not want Mike to get into football. He wanted him to be a successful attorney. Well, as it turns out, when Paul got let go, fired up in Cleveland, Mike was one that helped him lay the groundwork in the Cincinnati area for the franchise, legally and every other way. And at that point, Mike Brown said, you know what, I want to get in this business. My legal background will serve me well, negotiating contracts and all the things that go along with it. But I want to get into football. I like it. I like that life. And he never misses a practice unless he's at a league meeting. 83 years old there every single day. And he doesn't want to do anything else with his life. He doesn't vacation.
There are very few people like that. Al Davis was that way, right? I mean, Art was at most, but that's such a different world than Stephen Ross, who jets in for the games. You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
It really is. It's different when it's your life because it's not anybody else's life. They've made their money elsewhere. It's a toy. There's very little of this left in American sport, let alone the National Football League, right?
No question about it. It's not like with the money that they've made as a family, they don't have other, quote, investments, but they don't have other businesses. And like you said, look at the multi-billionaire owners there are in the National Football League, and a lot of them made most of their money outside of football. And but the NFL is a hell of an investment in itself, though, Nestor. I mean, if you had money over the last decade and a half that was laying around, you didn't know what to do with it, somehow you got involved as an investor in the National Football League ownership, you made yourself a pot full of money. I mean, this thing is just, it's not Fortune 500, it's Fortune 50, maybe Fortune 25 type business opportunities. But He is so enthralled and entrenched in the game of football. I mean, it means everything to him. He loves the process of seeing a team put together from the draft, the off-season veteran free agent draft, put it together, piece it together. How's it going to be formed? He loves the entire process, and he said to me many times, I feel so blessed to have been able to do this for my lifetime. This work is honest and fun and enjoyable, and I wish more people had the opportunity to do it. He absolutely, it's a love story with football. So he does want to win, and people think all he cares about is making money and not winning. Every owner cares about making money, but they spend it now. I mean, they just extended Geno Atkins, extended Carlos Dunlap. If you do fine by Mike Brown, he'll do fine by you. He rewards his guys. I mean, their mentality is draft, develop, and retain. And Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins get a third bite of the apple, not just a second, a third, with big guaranteed money. So he desperately wants to field a winning football team. And as the son of Paul Brown, there's pressure to do that. He still, at 83 years old, still feels that pressure, that shadow of his dad, where his dad was so successful, and he would love nothing more than to bring a championship in the National Football League to the city of Cincinnati. No question about it.
Dave Lapham has been there for 43 years, is the color voice the last 33 years. All of our WNST programming brought to you by our friends at Sporticulture. The flowers around me here at WNST on our set can be yours. They're just a click away. Just go to sporticulture.com. I got my beautiful, they're actually soft. They smell nice. The kitty loves them in here. Sporticulture.com. It's local. My man Cord out on the west side of town, growing them right here in Maryland, but they'll ship them anywhere you are. Also brought to you by our friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast, tasty coffee, the best fried chicken in the land, and don't sleep on those Western fries. Make sure you're using the ROFO rewards card and the ROFO app on your phone when you're pumping your gas. They add up quickly when you pump $40, $50, $60 worth of gas. I'm telling you, you'll get your fried chicken, you'll get your coffee for free. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. Also brought to you by Cole Roofing and Fister Energy, of course, sponsoring our Thursday community and charity series. If you have a story to tell out in the community anywhere, you're having a 5K, a 10K, and a dinner, an event, a bull roast, whatever you're doing out there, if it's for a great cause, I want to tell your story. Throw me an email, nasty@WNST.net. You can also find us on Facebook, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Twitter, anywhere social media is. Toss me a note. We'll get you in here on Thursdays. It's all brought to you by Cole Roofing and Fister Energy. Billy Cole will be by to talk about the 1-0 Ravens before they're potentially the 2-0 Ravens. Dave Lapham is our guest. He's out in the Queen City preparing personally chili right now with a right? You're doing that for me, right, Dave? No.
I'll tell you, there's nothing like a good freeway at Skyline Chili, man. That dog will hunt.
Skyline's your thing. That's your place.
That's my place,
All
Skyline
right.
Chili. There's nothing like it.
I'm just saying, is there some backwoods place making chili in some Mamacita kitchen somewhere on the Kentucky side that I could go and get a bowl that I don't know about that I can only find from a local like you?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there are on both sides of the river. But I'm a devoted Skyline guy for some reason, man. I just can't get enough of that.
They
stuff.
put the cinnamon in the thing. It's different.
Exactly. It's cinnamon and chocolate. Yeah.
It's chocolate? They put chocolate in there?
There's chocolate in it too. Yeah, supposedly that's a rumor mill. Yeah.
I'm going to Google that, man. Y'all crazy down in Cincinnati, putting the cheese on those little conies and doing all that. Luke will be with us. We'll be there Thursday night. Dave will be calling the action after a big win against Indianapolis. And let's talk about Indy for just 1 second, and I'll get to your squad. But the Andrew Luck story, it's as good as we've got going before Aaron Rodgers did what he did on Sunday night, right?
I'll tell you what, Aaron Rodgers, that was incredible what he did on Sunday night. But you're right, Andrew Luck went through hell. Andrew Luck, his shoulder was he didn't think he was ever going to play football again, and he said he was in a dark place, and he really had himself a tough time. But not only that injury, I mean, lacerated kidneys, partial tear of abdomens. I mean, these are car wrecks. These are accidents that you have in an automobile incident. It's not what happens on a football field. In 5 years, he was hit 400 times. I mean, just blasted. So to have him back, and the NFL is going to protect him now. Boy, anytime the Bengals put a more than a patty cake on him, they were flagged for a personal foul. But that aside, he was incredible. They had him throw it 53 times. The Bengals only ran 50 snaps in the game. The Colts ran over 80. He threw it 53 times, 48 of those 53 throws, the ball was in the air for 10 yards or less. On the play-by-play sheet, if you get a copy of it, short middle, short left, short right. He threw the ball down the field a handful of times in 53 pass attempts. And it just tells you the state of what their franchise is in. At the very first game out of the gate, they put it on his shoulders. I mean, they couldn't run it very well. They threw it, 53 times and ran it 20 whatever. It was more than a 2-to-1 ratio throwing the football to running it for sure.
Well, tale of two games, really. By the time I got to it, it was 23-10. It looked like the Bengals are going to be 0-1 and scuffling. And then lo and behold, there's Green, there's Mixon, there's a big play. Defensively, obviously, I don't know how to pronounce this kid's name. Fedulum.
Right.
Fedulum. I'm working on pronunciation here. I'm still getting the Lapham at this point. But the last quarter and a half, it was a dominating performance by the Bengals, certainly giving everyone in Bengal land and the jungle some hope on Thursday night. We know we're coming off short rest here. It's always tough to come on the road and win in Cincinnati.
Yeah, the short rest thing is going to be a factor. Preston Brown, their linebacker they get from the Buffalo Bills in free agency, tweaked his ankle. And on a short week, I'm not sure that he's going to make the dance. It's going to be interesting to see. He was in a walking boot after the game going to the buses back to Cincinnati. In Fedulum, I think the final play, the 83-yard fumble recovery return for a touchdown, is a synopsis of the game. Preston Brown's out with the ankle injury. Hardy Nickerson Jr. is in the game, college free agent, wasn't even drafted. The guy, Clayton Fedulum, is in the game because Sean Williams gets ejected for the hit on Andrew Luck in the first quarter of the football game, early in the game. So he's another college free agent, undrafted, out of Illinois. So you have two college free agents combining on a hit on Doyle, the Pro Bowl tight end, stripping him of the football and returning it for a touchdown. They wouldn't even be in the game if not for injury and ejection. And they're the two that combined to make the game-winning play. That's life in the National Football League in a nutshell.
Marvin's old as dirt, man, right? He's coached Hardy Nickerson the first, now the second. Right. He might hang on me. It's crazy, right?
It is, but that he has a true affection for Hardy Nickerson Jr., who he's a football mensa. His football IQ is unquestioned. He's basically born and raised. He was bred to play the game. He's not blessed with great foot speed, but he slows the game down because of his mind, his mental capacity for the game. He's always in the right place, always taking the right angles, always being where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. That kind of guy, nuts and bolts kind of guy you have to have in your football team.
Well, it's easy to look up here, Dave, and see, the Atkins and the Kirkpatricks and the Dunlops, the guys we're familiar with. But defensively, a lot of new names in there, a lot of mix. And I know the last couple of years you and I have talked about how familiar all the guys in the defense were. And obviously, they blew the offensive line up last year, I should say, and you being an old O-lineman, that didn't go well. This year, it feels like the defense is a little bit in flux, right?
Yeah, I think that they have made some changes and necessary changes. The strongest position group on the football team, though, is the defensive line. They feel like they've got a true 8-man rotation, that they feel good about any one of those 8 players playing any snap in a football game. They've tried to get a little bit more athletic at linebacker. Nick Vigil is a guy that can really run, and he can play in space. Jordan Evans is the same type of way, even though he's a little bit bigger guy. Preston Brown is a 3-down linebacker out of Buffalo. That's what they tried to get done at the linebacker level. Then on the back end, for the first time in a while, they don't have like 5 former first-round draft picks at corner. They have 3 cornerbacks they feel real comfortable with, and one of the big question marks on the defense is who's that 4th corner. And it's still in flux. It's still kind of to be determined. There are multiple guys that they're rolling in there at that spot. They have a young rookie second-round draft pick at safety, Jesse Bates out of Wake Forest, another guy that's got real strong football acumen, very good athlete. They're looking for him to increase the turnover possibilities in the back end. George Iloka is a very smart guy, but not a big takeaway guy, not a turnover guy. So they wanted to go younger, more athletic, a little more speed and explosiveness, and see if that pays dividends at safety in the back end.
Dave Lapham is always our guest whenever we get together with the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll be eating some chili out there on Thursday night. Luke and I will be on the scene. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Pizza John's, my mom's favorite pizza, my wife's favorite pizza. I've been digging on the cheesesteaks lately. I was down there Saturday for a cheesesteak. We brought a pizza home. They've been doing it for 50 years down there at Bag River Neck Road in Essex. Make sure you stop by and see them and get a pizza soon with the tasty pepperoni on top. That's Pizza John's. Fremont Mortgage, don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. That's Fremont.com online, buying, selling, thinking about it. As well, next Tuesday night, Alex Lewis going to be out swabbing with us for the Bone Marrow Registry, doing some radio, probably speaking some German as well with my wife next Tuesday night. We'll have more details on that later on in the week. It's all brought to you by Fremont Mortgage. They sponsor all of our live shows as well as our swabbings. Last but never least, get on out to Rosedale and give the King a ring. Lottery, beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore, as well as a smile from Johnny Bev on all the TV commercials. That beard's getting longer than Eric Weddle's, I think. Check him out on Pulaski Highway in Rosedale. It is King Discount Liquors. Give the King a ring. I'm going to Queen City on Thursday night with Dave Lapham to watch Andy Dalton toss it around. Dave, I've saved the best for last year on the offense, and, I know it was a much maligned pick on Joe Mixon. We're all familiar with the video and all the nonsense that went on before he became a Bengal. Him, Ross, a lot of these Eifert position players that we've seen, we're all familiar with Green, but getting the whole complement of these players, including Gio Bernard, onto the field, I don't know that I've seen a whole lot of that with the Bengals in recent years, right? Somebody's always missing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they feel real good about their skilled players. You rattled off a bunch of them, and everybody made contributions. I mean, Mixon rushed for 95 yards on 17 carries. He had 5 catches for 54 more yards. So on 22 touches, he had 149 yards and a touchdown. So he was productive. Andy Dalton's day started off horrifically. His first pass of the season, due to pressure up the middle by a defensive tackle from the Colts, he ends up getting a flutter ball. It just kind of floats out into space. It looks like a pick six. He makes the most important tackle of the game. He goes and takes him down at the 7-yard line. Look, and they how they GPS even the players now. I mean, they track the speed of everybody. He flashes up on the board toward the end of the game, 4th fastest miles per hour of any player in the football game at 18.8 miles an hour. I'm like, after the game, I'm like, Andy, man, I didn't know you're an Olympic sprinter. Said sometimes you got to run faster than you can. I bet the adrenaline was pumping after that interception. He made a great play. And it turns out 2 plays later, Luck throws an interception. Preston Brown picks him off the 2-yard line. They get no points out of that red zone opportunity. And it was a big factor in the football game. And then after that, he completes 75% of his passes, over 240 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So, he was typical Andy Dalton after that, and spread the ball around to, a bunch of different receivers. He involved 9 receivers, 9 different guys caught a football, 28 different guys, 28 targets to 9 different players, and completed 21 of them. So he was efficient. You mentioned, all of his weapons. The key is how that offensive line play. And, they maybe get a C in my book. They ran the ball well. And I think a lot of it was Joe Mixon's excellence. They averaged over 5 yards a rush on their 20 carries. But pass protection was a little bit shoddy. Bobby Hunt struggled badly at the right tackle position. Bobby Hart, I should say, struggled.
Well, they didn't run a lot of plays either, right? I mean, so possession's an issue.
Yeah, they ended up running 50 snaps, and they only threw it 28 times, and Bobby Hart gave up 2 sacks and 28 pass attempts. But you're right. I mean, they were defensively one of the flies in the ointment. At one point, they'd allowed 9 third-down conversions and 12 opportunities. They finished up 11 of 17 for 65%, but it was a hell of a lot more than that when they were having their struggles. And as a result of that third-down excellence and 2 turnovers, Colts ran 77 snaps. The Bengals ran 50. I mean, they were, they had issues in terms of the number of snaps on the football field. But that offensive line, it's just like last year, Nestor. My take on the Bengals last year was, because they did have a lot of skill players last year as well. If the offensive line just plays middle of the pack, they could win 10 games. If they don't, they'd struggle to win 6, and they end up winning 7 by going on that 2-game winning streak at the end of the season. Same this year. The offensive line, they're not the top 10, but if they play in the top 16 in the league, if they're middle of the pack, they could win 10 games. If they don't, they're going to struggle to win 6. And it's the same deal. You got 4 new guys up front with a new offensive line coach. They blew up what they were doing last year. And we'll see if it translates into better finishes this season.
Do you see similarities between Dalton and Flacco in a lot of ways? Not just build, stature, the ball coming out, but more than that, getting protected. Like having some semblance of a running game to create balance. Having a tight end has been big for both of these guys. When they haven't had that, they've struggled. And obviously the offensive line in Baltimore's been a mess for a period of time. It was the strength of the Bengals team, and I'm saying that to an O-line guy for a number of years. When that goes away, it's amazing how if you're not Tom Brady or you're not Rodgers or you're not some sort of Ben Roethlisberger that can make it up and draw it up in the dirt, running around and, flick off safeties and cornerbacks because you're so big, most of these guys, when the offensive line's not there, they become sub quarterbacks, quite frankly, right?
I agree. I agree with you. There's no doubt. I mean, it's no coincidence that the two times the Bengals went to the Super Bowl in the 80s, one of their strongest position groups was up front. Just like what you're talking about with Baltimore, when they have, their great runs and great teams, you get the Jonathan Ogden types in the offensive line. Are you kidding me? The guy has a movable condo. I mean,
that's why Munoz has a statue out there, right?
Oh, he should have a statue out there. Yeah, but he has a statue in the Hall of Fame, right? He has a statue up there just like Ogden does. I mean, he should have one in Cincinnati in my estimation too, but that's another story. But yeah, I mean, it is very few quarterbacks, particularly. The interior, now the way these three techniques are in the NFL and the way they're getting paid, the Aaron Donalds, Geno Atkins of the world, you have to have guys. Quentin Nelson was drafted with the sixth pick in the NFL by the Indianapolis Colts to battle Geno Atkins. And they had a very nice little battle going on in that opener. And if the inside of the pocket, if it's not firm for a quarterback, if there's pressure in his face, and protection in my mind is two things, time and space. If you're not allotting the quarterback enough space as well as time to see the football field, you're not doing justice by them. I mean, they have to, if they have an opportunity to operate, Flacco, Dalton, these guys get the ball out of their hand quickly, accurately, and to the right person. There's no doubt.
Sure, we'll see some sloppy football on Thursday night. It's always that way, Dave, but certainly for the Ravens, Flacco has rest. Yanda got, Suggs, they got guys off the field early and often on Sunday. So some of these guys are going to be pretty rested as they can be on Thursday night. I hope we get a good version of a Thursday night game. I know that's rare. It is early in the season, and I felt like the Bengals played a lot harder on Sunday than the Ravens needed to, so we factor that in. But a battle for first place in Week 2. You can't beat that, right? And chili with cinnamon and chocolate.
Yeah, I hear that, man. I hear all of that. I'll tell you what, the Ravens early in the season, last two openers, defense giving up 3 points. They came in and spanked the Bengals 20-0 last year in the opener. They give up 3 points in this opener, 8 quarters of play, 3 points on the board. That defense rocking and rolling. And, man, I understand that you've got a deal where Martindale is trying to be Rex Ryan Jr. I know I watched some of the preseason tape. He is blitzing. He's creating blitzes. I mean, I think he's run every blitz there is known to mankind. It's going to be a tough preparation week and a short week to prepare for what Coach Martindale's doing over there defensively.
Well, you're in Cincinnati. We're here in Baltimore. We don't have any baseball to cheer for, so the 1-0 start for both of us, we're perfect for at least 72 hours, and we'll get together on Thursday night and figure it out. Dave, it's always a pleasure, man. I can't wait to share a bowl of chili with you out there in Cincinnati.
Safe travels, my man. You're the best.
Dave Lapham, the longtime color voice of the Cincinnati Bengals. He is not on Twitter. He's one of those guys. Good for him. He's enjoying life more than I am lately, that's for sure. We'll be out in Cincinnati. Luke and I will be on the scene Thursday night at Paul Brown Stadium. Make sure you're checking us out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Don't forget that the breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That's all brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford Security Boulevard. Dennis is going to be here Thursday from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. It's going to get you ready for the game. Luke's going to check in. I'm going to check in. We're going to be out in Cincinnati nice and early. We're going to be all chillied up. And maybe, just maybe, the Ravens can steal a road game here and a road win and come back 2-0 so we can all sit and watch Red Zone over the weekend. Don't forget our morning newspaper delivers to your email inbox at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life guaranteed. Also brought to you by them Maryland Jockey Club in Laurel, where they're racing the DeFrancis Dash this weekend down at Laurel. Make sure you find that out on the front of WNST.net, as well as in our morning newspaper. They're there for you. The buyatoyota.com audio vault is there 24 hours a day to listen to anything you want that we do here. So if you want some Bengal stuff, some Bill stuff, some Terp stuff, some Oriole stuff, it's all up there, including all of our chats with Luke Jones. It is the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day, and you can listen live through that by the download the TuneIn radio app. I'm mixing up all of my apps around here, for crying out loud. Go listen live. It's all brought to you by buyatoyota.com. I am Nestor. Facebook finds me. LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, anywhere the internet serves you, it serves us, including in Cincinnati on Thursday night. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.